Good morning. So we're here for another story, and I thought I had my microphone all figured out, and I listened back to it, and it was glitchy. So I'm getting there. It actually works, but now I have to figure that part out. So we're going old school. We're doing the jury rig thing like we did last week. I'll figure it out at some point, but the whole point is telling the story. I am talking about a rock climber, and her name is Brett Quinn. And how I came across this story was about a year ago. I'm really big into documentaries, that's what I like to watch. And I came across a documentary called An Accidental Life on Amazon Prime. I'm going to link this down below so you too can watch it. I actually watched it again last night to kind of refresh my memory for this video. It's an inspiring story, but in the documentary, Quinn doesn't mince words, and you can feel the angst of her situation compared to what her life was like before the accident. In the documentary, it starts about 4 months after the accident, and I'm not sure if the person who was recording, because she's not on camera much, is her sister or just her friend. But she started documenting Quinn's journey around 4 months, and then the documentary ends 2 years or a little over 2 years after the accident happened. The accident happened October 11th, 2017, but I'm going to rewind and tell you about Quinn and what she did before the accident happened. So I'm going to read this part because it's kind of a lot. Prior to the accident, Brett worked as a climbing ranger in Rocky Mountain National Park, a coveted position on a team of only 5. She was the only woman. The team has since grown in size and has had several female climbing rangers. She also ironically volunteered with Paradox Sports out of Boulder, Colorado, an organization that helps people with amputation or spinal cord injuries experience the thrill of rock and ice climbing. Brett has long been an advocate for the outdoors and an active individual. From what I gather, from what I've read and what I've watched, that Quinn had lived in Estes Park, Colorado for about 5 years. And again, very active. This is what she did. She was a rock climber. She had seen in Yosemite, it's a climber's paradise. I've actually watched other documentaries about this. It's called El Capitan. It's for really experienced climbers. Now, I am not a climber. I'm afraid of heights. I don't understand the lure when you're holding on by your fingertips, but a lot of people, this is their happy place. This is their life. This is their challenge. Before the accident, Quinn had climbed El Capitan, and specifically is called the Nose, and that's what they were climbing the day that the accident happened. She was familiar with this climb. She even, in June 2012, set the women's speed record for scaling the Nose. And in June 2014, her and another friend climber, I think her name is Libby Sauter, made another record by climbing 2 routes on the same day. October 11th, 2017, her and a girlfriend had gone to climb the Nose again, something that she had done multiple times before and even set records at. This accident happened while they were ascending. It's called Boot Flake section of the Nose. It's about 1,500 feet above the El Capitan Meadow in Yosemite Valley. It's where I want to kind of pause to talk about something else, because she said that she should not have been on the mountain that day. Her and her partner, and in the documentary, they show many clips of them climbing together and having fun. He was a mountain climber too. She said that they had not been getting along for like 9 months, had gotten in a fight. She just kind of packed her bags and said that she was running from there. In the documentary, she even said, "I wish I would have stayed." I also read in an article that wasn't in the documentary. The article, it said that she had also lost 2 good friends, rock climbing friends, to an avalanche. To be in that headspace, but I think too that that is always where she ran to make her feel better or make her feel alive. So it's kind of that dichotomy of where she went to feel better and then where her mind space was for maybe why this happened. I'm going to read this part because she explains in detail what actually happened in this accident. She says, I am leading with placing gear to a feature called the boot flake. That's about 1,500 feet up, but maybe 100 feet below the boot flake is another feature called the Texas flake. It's a big piece of rock that sticks out separately away from the main cliff of El Capitan. So I was on top of Texas flake and set sail on granite slab and clipped all these bolts. The space between my gear was getting further and further apart. I was maybe 20 or 30 or 40 feet up from the last bolt. I had a cam in the rock, but I took the cam out for some reason, which is unusual for my protocol. I usually have two cams in, and in my rushedness or distracted brain, I took the cam out. She must have had a GoPro on her while she was doing this, because in the documentary, it shows exactly the moment that this is happening. She goes on to say, I reached across to my right hip to grab another piece of gear, and at that exact time, my foot or my hands or both slipped out of the rock. I just remember granite whooshing before my eyes as I fell. I hit that Texas flake with my back and my shoulder. I was just laying in the rubble, and my climbing partner Josie immediately initiated a rescue. My T12 vertebrae shattered outwardly and inwardly into my spinal cord. I think I had 4 or 5 broken ribs. I had some internal bleeding and a punctured lung. My right scapula looks like a sledgehammer hit it. 14 staples in the back of my head. I had a pretty big swelling and on the front of my head like a hematoma and paralysis because of the shattered bone pieces in my spinal cord. It's interesting how all this was pretty much caught either in video or in photos. They show her climbing, like I said in the documentary, you can see that, and also pictures of her being extracted by helicopter and the people, the rescue team that came together to then get her off the mountain to get her help. After her accident, I'm not sure how long, but it didn't seem like it was too far past it. Her boyfriend of 4 years broke up with her. I want to talk about in the documentary. The documentary begins with kind of going back. It seems like it's already been put together. And in the beginning, this person is asking her if they got it right or what they think, she would want to have it said better or more. First thing that she said is that she wished she would have talked about more about, being a paraplegic and more towards that and what they could do better. It was an interesting concept after seeing her life on film and being told, from the accident and becoming a paraplegic, that that she would think about that first. And I love how her perspective, and in this documentary, it shows it's just from a human level perspective. I think sometimes we romanticize. She even says, oh, people say, oh, you're inspiring and, keep going. And she still does sports, and I will talk about that soon. She said, but they don't know what I used to be able to do. One moment that stands out to me of the documentary is the woman, they're in a car, and she says to her, are you glad that you lived? You really had to ponder that over. And she said, I think so. This documentary it covers like 2 years after the accident. As I told you, her boyfriend had broken up with her. Now she had to navigate a life where she was single. She was just in her 30s. It didn't say her exact age when this happened, but I'm assuming like early 30s. She wanted to get married and have kids. She said when she was younger, she said she would never get married. She told the story about being in school, and she said, I'm never getting married. And she went to the back of the line, and she said she wasn't sure where that came from, but in the moment, you can tell. Listen, we already have self doubt. It's already hard to put ourselves out there and be vulnerable to love someone and to deal with somebody who you had been with for 4 years that after something so tragic happened, and I know she did say that they were on rocky ground, but for that person then to leave you right after this happens, and you're truly in a vulnerable place, and now life is totally different, and she even talks about who's going to love me. I think sometimes even as able-bodied people, I know I myself think that sometimes, who's going to love me. She talks about why nobody would pick her even before this, and then kind of why would they really choose her now after all this, and she was in a wheelchair. In the documentary, it gets down to the nitty gritty. It talks about personal things like the first time she was intimate after the accident. I love how they use humor, and again, it's just real life, and you can feel her trepidation with everything in the new life after. You can be inspiring to people, but not feel inspiring yourself. In the documentary, at the end, they're at Yosemite, they're back where it happened. It's the 2-year anniversary of her fall. She has a boyfriend, and they all go jump in the river, and looks like that they're having a good time. But from what I've read after, and I follow her on Instagram, I went down a year ago after I saw this. Again, when I'm interested in a story, I really like to see what's happened after and what's going on now. Like, I don't think she talks much about her personal life anymore, but it seemed like after that they had broken up after the documentary was over at some point. I was reading an interview with her from April of 2023, so fairly recent. I want to read you what she said in this article about still feeling shame from being in a wheelchair after all this. He said, I still struggle with it. I have a lot of shame still being in public in my wheelchair. I get embarrassed about things like the amount of eyeballs I get when I hand cycle around Lake Estes, or people being like, you go girl, you don't even know the shit I was doing before. My heart rate is not even 100 now, but I clearly have that internal dialogue, and I talk to myself every day on the hand cycle. I'm like, what good does this do? Is it going to keep me inside? No. Get over yourself. Get outside. What's more important, being sulking inside and sitting on the couch and eating that ice cream, or going to effing earn the ice cream? Why not try? That's the human I've always been. But she still hasn't quit. She's still breaking records. In 2021, in the summer of 2021, she became the first person to hand cycle the Great Divide mountain bike route from the Canadian border to the Mexican border in 25 days. Still, the mindset of somebody who still has all those negative thoughts in their mind, but still that human spirit keeps her going to want to still accomplish more. And I'm going to read this because she has done so much, even well, she'd done so much before the accident, but since the accident, she actually she worked for the National Park Service. And in the documentary, they have her come to Washington to talk about a role for her. She took her experience with the National Park Service and her passionate perspectives about outdoor recreation into creating a new role, that of program and analyst, to help establish more backcountry accessibility in national parks. Part of this role involved developing and delivering wilderness accessibility and mobility training in 8 national parks, including Rocky Mountain, Glacier, Grand Canyon, Mount Rainier, Grand Teton, Saguaro, Smoky Mountains, and Delaware Water Gap. She hopes to keep building this knowledge within the national parks. Brett recently left the NPS and now works for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, serving as one of 7 accessibility consultants. In this position, she completes accessibility reviews for federally assisted U.S. FWS sites, like Cameo Shooting and Education Complex near Grand Junction, and at federally conducted programs like Wildlife Refuge. The reviews vary per site, but she checks compliance for accessibility standards per location. In addition to fighting for public lands, outdoor recreation, and backcountry accessibility, Brett serves on the board of Unite 2 Flight Paralysis and consults with public land managers about modifications for accessibility on mountain bike trails. She also continues to climb, stay active, and set new records. On the 5-year anniversary of her fall, Brett climbed Touchstone Wall in Zion National Park. It's more like juggling up the wall now, like pull-ups on a rope, said Brett. It is not as glorious of a movement, but I can't feel the pain in my legs. It does come with a very high anxiety, though. Most recently, she was the first person to complete the Tour Divide, a 2,450-mile ride from Montana to New Mexico on a hand cycle. In October 2023, she will ride her off-road mobility device 44 miles on a rim-to-rim-to-rim ride in the Grand Canyon National Park over 2 days. Looking beyond October, Brett hopes people can change how they see those with disabilities and that even small developments can be made for people with spinal cord injuries to improve their quality of life. I really suggest that you go watch that documentary. Again, it's just a true life, raw following of how she felt and what happened and all the real emotions, not romanticizing anything about what happened, and knowing that it's still hard and she still gets sad and embarrassed, like she said, to be in a wheelchair, which she shouldn't, but coming from ourselves, we know how we talk to ourselves. Going from being an able bodied person, and we already have those vulnerabilities and those fears, to then going to someone who is in a wheelchair, but then still fighting to help other people and to better herself and to still set goals and crush them. That's what I love about the storytelling. It's about the human spirit. Even though our bodies may become disabled or crushed, or things in our life are crushing, soul crushing, we've all been there. That it's our human spirit that I don't think ever dies or ever lets us. Um, it keeps us going. It keeps us wanting to move forward, and that's where I find the beauty, and that's why I tell these stories. So, oops. So, I hope you enjoyed this story, and yeah, I'll be back with more because I find a lot of joy in telling them. So, I hope you find a lot of joy in listening to them. All right, you know what to do. Go out, make an adventure, no matter how big or how small. You do not have to sell everything and move into a van. Go call someone you love, and as Joy says, tell them that you love them, and don't you dare forget your magic. Okay, I will see you in the next one. Bye.